Have you ever felt like the world had a strange power to hurt you? As if a crooked look, an unexplained absence, a word thrown out were enough for everything inside you to crumble? Maybe on the outside you continue to smile, be strong, live, but inside, your soul bleeds in silence. And the most painful thing of all, you don't even know where you are anymore. Rumi wrote, "You are born with wings. Why do you prefer to crawl through life? But what if you don't even know you have wings? And if all this suffering that accompanies you, rejection, abandonment, lack of love, silence, is not what destroys you, but what reveals how disconnected you still are from yourself? The world only hurts those who have not yet recognized themselves. And maybe that's why so many things still have the power to hurt you. Do you feel it? Do you feel like just when you're not enough is enough to make your soul shrink? Do you feel like when he leaves, it feels like he took a part of you with him? That when silence arrives, you become noise inside? But what if I told you that what hurts isn't what they did to you, but what did you fail to do for yourself? You were born with a whole soul, but you spent your life trying to fit into the pieces of others. Maybe no one explained it to you, but the pain you feel today is not just about now. It carries old memories, childhood wounds, echoes of a story where you learned you needed to deserve love, and now, she lives in search of approval, of validation, of being chosen, even if that means abandoning yourself again. But there is a turning point, a moment when something inside you awakens, and you begin to realize that it is not the other person who hurts you. It's you who haven't found yourself yet. Because when you find yourself, when you recognize yourself, the world completely loses its power to hurt you. And it's not because he changes, it's because you've changed. What was once criticism is now noise. What was once abandonment is now liberation. What was once pain is now a sign. Rumi said, "Don't settle for stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend." But how can you wake up if you are still sleeping inside yourself? How can you heal if you still treat yourself like a walking wound? How can you truly love if you've never found yourself whole? This search for the other, this need that screams, this urgency to be seen, chosen, loved, are not defects. These are symptoms. Symptoms of a soul that is still searching for itself. You may have spent your life believing that you needed to be accepted to feel safe. But now, something in you starts to wonder, what if my healing is the exact opposite of that? What if, instead of begging to be loved, do you learn to find yourself, recognize yourself, to live? The emptiness you feel is not weakness. It is the space that your essence left when you left yourself to live in the other. But now it's time to go back. Because the world can continue to be cruel, noisy, indifferent. But when you are at peace with who you are, nothing can unsettle you anymore. You don't break, you transform. You don't beg, you choose. You do not suffer in vain, you awaken. And that's where the magic happens. It is at this exact turning point that everything starts to make sense. But how do you truly find yourself? How to stop crawling for love and start flying with your own wings? That's what you're going to find out now. But before I continue, I want to make you a silent invitation. If any part of what I've said so far has touched something within you, if any sentence made you feel like this isn't just a story, it's yours history, write in the comments, "I find myself again now." Because sometimes all the soul needs is to declare that it is ready, ready to return, ready to remember, ready to live from the inside out. And if this video is making you see things differently, leave your like. It's more than a button. It's a sign that this message needs to reach more souls like yours. And if this journey resonates with you, subscribe to the channel. Because here, every word is a key, each video is a mirror, and each encounter could be the beginning of a healing you never knew you needed. Now, take a deep breath, because what comes next is a deeper dive, a sincere look at what hurts you and you can't even explain, about what empties you, even when everything seems right on the outside. Maybe you're experiencing this right now. You may not realize it right away, but much of what hurts you today doesn't come from now. It comes from before. It comes from a time when you didn't yet have words, but already felt too much. When you were just a child trying to understand why the gaze of the one you loved most wasn't entirely yours. When you learned without realizing it, that you needed to adapt, mold yourself, keep quiet, just to be accepted, just to be seen, just to not be left behind again. And that's why today, even as an adult, even as a conscious person, you still feel like you live at the mercy of another's gaze. A criticism dismantles you. The other's silence paralyzes you. A no echoes like abandonment. And love. Love has become a minefield between what you feel and what the other allows. Your soul lives on alert. Your chest closes. And all you wanted was a little peace. But what no one told you is that this pain isn't weakness. It's memory. It's an open wound. It's an absence of self. The problem isn't with others, no matter how much it seems. It's in that space inside you where your essence has been silenced, where your truth has been set aside, so you can fit into someone else's expectations. And the cruelest thing about all this is that over time you get used to it. You get used to the pain, the neediness, the emptiness. You start to think this is normal, but it isn't. It's not normal to live in constant fear of rejection. It's not normal to have to work so hard to be loved. It's not normal to beg for attention, for presence, for reciprocity. It's not normal to live with the feeling that you're always too much, or never enough. And even though you know this rationally, deep down you keep repeating the same patterns. Loving too much, expecting too much, denying yourself too much. And do you know why? Because there's a part of you that still believes you need to earn love, that you need to sacrifice to be valued, that you need to give yourself until you bleed, just to not be forgotten. It's an old programming, one that was installed way back when you were still forming your identity. An inner voice that says, if you're not perfect, they'll leave you. If you show too much of who you are, they'll walk away. So you shut yourself down, or you give too much of yourself, or you annul yourself. All this to keep the other person close. But deep down, the pain remains. Because no one can fill what you yourself have abandoned. And this is where the wound hides. In that invisible place where you've lost touch with your own soul. Where you've gone from being a home to yourself, to a house open to the approval of others. Rumi said, "Why do you remain in prison when the door is wide open?" And this prison often isn't made of walls, but of emotional patterns you can't see, but feel every day. You feel it when you reply to a message too quickly, afraid of seeming disinterested. You feel it when you post something hoping for a specific like, as if that would validate your worth. You feel it when you sleep with your phone in your hand, waiting for him or her to say something that will make your heart stop aching. You feel it when you spend hours reliving a conversation, trying to understand where you went wrong. But maybe you weren't wrong. Maybe the mistake was simply forgetting yourself, putting the other at the center of your existence, and allowing the world to become the mirror in which you seek to recognize yourself. But mirrors break, and when you lean on them to see yourself, the reflection always comes back distorted. The invisible problem isn't the other person, it's what you've come to believe about yourself. That you're not worthy, that you're not enough, that you need to be chosen to have value. But this idea is a lie, an emotional lie you repeat so often you don't even notice it anymore. And every time you accept crumbs, this lie grows stronger. That's why you feel this constant weight, this silent anguish, this feeling that something is missing, even when everything seems fine, because your soul knows. It knows you're living far from who you truly are, that you're putting on too many masks, too many expectations, too many demands, where there should only be presence. And when you distance yourself so much, even the affection of another becomes a threat. Even love seems dangerous, because the wound is still raw. And any gesture that touches too close to what's hurt feels like aggression, but it's not. It's just the pain wanting to be seen. It's just the soul trying to get your attention. Do you feel it? Do you feel like you're tired, but you don't know why? As if I had done everything right, but the emptiness still lived inside? As if all you wanted was someone to look at you and say, "I see you, I understand you. You can stop fighting now." Maybe you're waiting for that look from the outside, but it will never come with the strength you need until you look at yourself that way. Until you say to yourself, "I see myself. I understand myself. I'm here for myself." The soul is not wounded by a lack of love. It is wounded by too much forgetfulness, and all she wants is to be remembered. If this made sense to you, comment below. I'm coming back to myself, because sometimes healing starts with a simple choice to come back. And this is where we begin to see more clearly, because now you can feel that the pain that haunts you so much didn't begin with someone else. It wasn't born from a recent rejection, nor from a current absence. It's older, more deeply rooted, more silent. It began the moment you, for some reason, stopped being your own dwelling and began to inhabit the eyes of others, waiting for them to reflect back to you a reflection that would make you believe you deserve to exist. Rumi said, "You wander from room to room, searching for the necklace that's already around your neck." And that's exactly what most of us do. Wander, get lost, move away, believe the answer is outside. That healing will come from someone else. That love is only valuable when it comes from outside. That peace only exists if the world cooperates. And so, without realizing it, you give your power away to that which you cannot control, to others, to circumstances, to the past, to lack. But the root of pain is something else. The root of pain is spiritual, not in the religious sense, but in the profound sense, in the invisible space where the soul communicates with truth. And this truth is simple. When you are far from yourself, everything out there becomes a threat. Criticism destroys you because you are not anchored in your own vision. The silence of others annihilates you because you are not at peace with your own presence. Rejection hurts because you still reject parts of yourself. This is the absence that hurts the most. And the problem is, it doesn't scream. It whispers. It whispers while you smile on social media, while you obligingly reply, "I'm fine," while you pretend to be too busy to look within. Because if you do, you'll see that your soul has been crying out for help for years. The spiritual root of pain lives there, in the place where you learned you needed to be someone else to be loved, in the place where you silenced your intuition to please, where you ignored your limits to keep someone close, where you said yes when everything inside you screamed no. That's where the wound forms, not from the absence of love from the other, but from the absence of your own love. The soul knows when it's been abandoned, and the body feels it. It feels it in the anxiety that appears for no reason, in the heart that races when someone ignores you, in the anguish that takes over even on seemingly peaceful days. Because the soul doesn't want external peace. It wants reconnection. It wants truth. It wants you to return to who you truly are. But the world doesn't teach you that. The world teaches you to run, to be productive, to be desirable, to be chosen. The world doesn't talk about presence, it talks about performance. And so you spend your life trying to perform a version of yourself that's loved, while your essence dies a little each day, until the moment comes when you no longer know who you are, and everything starts to hurt. You feel like you've lost your footing, but the truth is you never had one. You've always been hanging on to someone else, and now that he's gone, everything falls apart. But maybe this pain isn't destruction. Maybe it's the beginning of something sacred, of a return, of a reunion with your soul, because only those who lose themselves can truly find themselves again. Rumi said, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. But you've grown accustomed to living as if you were nothing, as if you were too small, too sensitive, too confused. And this distorted view of yourself has created a cycle of pain that repeats itself. You abandon yourself. The world abandons you. You become silent. No one listens to you. You diminish yourself, and everything seems too big to face. But this is an illusion. It's the illusion of disconnection, the spiritual pain that arises from the separation between you and your essence. And until this bridge is rebuilt, nothing will fill it. No praise will suffice. No love will last. No achievement will bring peace, because peace doesn't come from others. Healing doesn't come from time. Love doesn't come from outside. It all begins when you decide to turn inward, when you stop seeking approval and start seeking meaning, when you stop wanting to be chosen and start choosing yourself, when you stop wanting to be seen and start seeing yourself with the eyes of your soul. But this requires courage, because looking within means confronting everything you've ignored for too long. It's feeling the pain without anesthesia. It's hearing the cry of your inner child who only wanted to be loved for who you are, not for what you do, nor for what you give. It's accepting that the wound is open, but also accepting that you have the right hands to touch it. And maybe that's why you're here, not by chance, but because your soul can no longer bear to scream in silence. It wants healing. It wants reunion. It wants to be remembered, because no matter how much you try to run away from yourself, Your essence will always call you back. Always. Maybe today is that calling. Maybe now is your time to stop running, to stop begging for love, to stop adapting to be accepted, and begin for the first time to accept yourself exactly as you are, with pain, with flaws, with light, with shadow, because it is in truth that freedom resides. It is in vulnerability that strength resides, and it is in the reconnection with the soul that healing resides. If something inside you felt all of this, comment here. I'm ready to hear myself. Sometimes the soul just needs to know that you are still willing to listen, and perhaps now, after all you've heard, something inside you has begun to stir, a different kind of silence, a silence that doesn't suffocate but reveals, a pause where, for a brief moment, you hear something that doesn't come from the world, but from your soul. And there, in that space between the noise of thoughts and the echo of old memories, a truth emerges that no one has told you. The truth is, the world only has the power to hurt you while you don't see yourself as you truly are, while you don't find yourself. Because when you find yourself, things don't stop happening. People will still disappoint you. Some will leave without explanation. Others will say hurtful words. But something changes. Something essential changes within you. And this change is invisible on the outside but absolute on the inside. It's as if your worth ceases to be in the hands of others, as if your soul stops begging for recognition and begins to rest in the simple fact of existing. And that's where true healing begins. Not when everything is resolved, but when you stop abandoning yourself. What no one taught you is that the greatest wound in your life wasn't someone else's abandonment. It was your own. It was when, way back when, you decided you needed to be someone different to be accepted. It was when you hid your vulnerability to appear strong. It was when you held back your tears to avoid causing discomfort. It was when you smiled to avoid rejection. It was when you stopped being yourself, just to continue being loved. But there is a key, a spiritual key, hidden, silent, and powerful. This key is not in books. It is not in external promises. It doesn't come with ready-made formulas or guarantees. It only appears when you finally look at yourself without rushing. When you choose, even when you're afraid, to stop running away from yourself. And the key is this: healing doesn't come when someone else values you. Healing comes when you finally find yourself, when you recognize your soul as sacred, when you accept that your worth is non-negotiable, when you stop comparing yourself, justifying yourself, shrinking, when you stop molding yourself to fit in, when you allow your pain to speak, and still choose to love who you are. This is when the cycle of pain begins to break, not by magic, but by presence. You begin to perceive yourself as whole, and whoever is whole no longer lives trying to complete themselves in another. Rumi said, "Don't hide behind your wounds. Show them like a medal, because it was in them that you found yourself." And that is the hidden key that transforms everything. Understanding that pain is not the end. Pain is the passage. She is the fire that burns what is not you. It's the mirror that forces you to stop lying to yourself. It is the scream that breaks the silence that you yourself have learned to endure. You begin to realize that everything that hurt you also woke you up, that every absence taught you presence, that every rejection brought you back to yourself, that every time someone turned their back, it was life pushing you back to the only place you should be, inside yourself. This turnaround is not rational. It is spiritual. It's a kind of awakening that doesn't need applause. No need for advertisement. It's silent, but definitive. You no longer seek to be loved like an emotional beggar. You no longer beg for emotional crumbs. You no longer accept the minimum. Because now you know. You know that whoever finds themselves no longer needs to be rescued. And maybe right now you're starting to feel it, not with euphoria, but with peace, a different peace, a peace that comes from reconnecting with your essence, with that part of you that was always there but was silenced by the demands of the world, the part that doesn't need to be proven, that doesn't need to compete, that only and its essence does not scream. She doesn't dispute. She waits. Wait for the moment when you finally get tired of running and decide to stay. Stay with you. Stay with your truth. Stay with your vulnerability. Stay with your light and your shadow. And in that moment, you stop being hurt, and it starts to be strength. Spiritual strength, silent strength, strength that doesn't need to hurt to assert itself, strength that does not depend on others to exist, strength that is born when you look into the mirror of your soul and recognize yourself. And everything changes. The way you love, the way you position yourself, the way you respond to pain, the way you take care of yourself. You stop hurting yourself because you stop abandoning yourself. You stop being destroyed by other people's words because you built yourself from within. You stop suffering from absence because you have filled yourself with presence. And presence is what heals. If this spiritual key made sense to you, comment below. I see myself with truth. Because sometimes all the soul needs is to be recognized by you. Maybe now you're starting to remember. Not something specific, but that feeling that stayed etched in your body, even after the story ended. That strange, invisible pain you carried for months, maybe years. It wasn't just about the person's absence, it was about the absence they activated within you. Because at some point, you believed you needed them to feel alive, to feel whole, to feel loved. As if your soul had been kidnapped and placed in the hands of someone who didn't know what to do with it. You may have experienced this kind of relationship, the one where you gave everything, absolutely everything, even when you received almost nothing. The one where you explained too much, suppressed too much, molded yourself too much, all to hold on to someone who was no longer there, or worse, who never was, who only took up space, who merely filled the silence but never truly touched your soul. You told yourself it was love, but deep down you knew what held you there wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being loved again, fear of having to deal with the emptiness that would come afterward, fear of looking in the mirror and not knowing who you were without that bond, even if it hurt you. And here lies the truth no one taught you. What you called love was, in fact, an absence of self. It was neediness. It was emotional desperation disguised as surrender. It was an inner cry for help trying to masquerade as connection. And this is a wound many people carry, but almost no one names. Because it's subtle, it's invisible, and often it's romanticized. Do you remember how many times you accepted crumbs and called it care? How many times have you been ignored and yet tried again? How many times have you cried in silence but still said it's okay? It wasn't all right. It never was. But you learned to call it love, because you didn't know the love that begins within. When we don't see each other, any affection seems like salvation. And the problem is that when you depend on the other to exist, you accept any version of presence, even if it hurts you, even if it silences your soul, even if it makes you doubt who you are. But something changes the moment you start to find yourself again. And what was fear begins to transform into clarity. You begin to realize that his silence wasn't about you. It was about him. It was about the lack that he also carries and doesn't know how to name. It was about his inability to love you, not about your inability to be loved. You stop wanting to change the other person, and you start taking responsibility for yourself. You look back and understand that everything that hurt was actually pointing to where you hadn't yet looked. That every absence you felt was a reminder that you were also absent from yourself. That every unspoken sentence, every ignored message, every broken plan, was an invitation from life for you to finally stop looking outside for what was always inside. You didn't need him to be whole. You needed to remember who you were. And when that happens, everything changes. You no longer accept crumbs because you have learned to nourish yourself. It no longer begs for presence because it has become presence. You no longer try to be chosen because you understand that you are your own choice. This doesn't mean the pain goes away, but she stops commanding. She becomes a messenger, not a sentence anymore. You look at that story and instead of blaming yourself, you embrace it. You understand that the version of you that gave too much of yourself was just trying to survive. I was just trying to be loved with the resources I had. And now you have other resources. Now you have consciousness, there is truth, there's a meeting. And that makes all the difference. Because you stop asking yourself, why did he do this to me? And you start to ask yourself, why did I allow myself to stay where there was no love? And that question changes everything, because it brings you back to yourself. And when you come to yourself, the cycle begins to break. You don't have to repeat the same patterns anymore. You no longer need to live the same type of relationship, just with different names. You no longer need to lose yourself in someone else to feel like you exist. You exist, and when you find yourself, no one else has the power to lose you. When you find yourself, love stops being war. The other's silence ceases to be a sentence. Absence ceases to be abandonment and becomes space. Space for you to see yourself, so that you can hear yourself, so you remember. Maybe now listening to this you are remembering someone, or maybe you're remembering a version of yourself, the one who waited too long, who believed too much, who loved too much, forgetting himself. But now you can choose differently, and the choice doesn't start out there. It starts within, here, now. If this touched on something you experienced, comment here. I free myself from what was erasing me. Sometimes healing begins with a single sentence, and yours can start here. And then something begins to happen. Not overnight, not with applause or fireworks, but inside, silently, yet irreversibly. It's as if the soul, after years of whispering and being ignored, is finally heard, and what it says is neither complicated nor mystical. It simply says, enough. No more begging for love. No more keeping quiet to keep the other person. No more repeating stories that make you sick. No more forgetting who you are just to be accepted. This is the moment when consciousness shifts. It's when you begin to realize that you're no longer living as a victim of events, that the past left its mark. Yes, but now you can choose what to do with those marks. And more than that you are not what was made of you. You are what you choose to be from now on. This awareness doesn't come with formulas. It doesn't come with external promises. It arises from an encounter with your own truth, with your core, with what no one can take from you. It's as if after so long trying to adjust to the world, you decide to return home. And that home is your body, your soul, your story, your denied pain, your diminished light, all of who you are, unfiltered, unedited, unashamed. Rumi said, "You were born with potential. Don't settle for less." But how many times have you settled for less, thinking it was the most you could have? How many times have you clung to emotional scraps, believing that was what you deserved? How many times have you lowered your head, swallowed the pain, pretended it didn't hurt, just so you wouldn't be left, just so you wouldn't be considered too difficult, too intense, too sensitive? The turning point happens when you look at yourself with the eyes of your soul and realize that it wasn't you who was too much. It was the world that was accustomed to too few people. People who live half-heartedly. People who don't feel. Who don't allow themselves to be touched deeply. Who are afraid of the depths you carry because they still live on the surface of themselves. And then you begin to rise. Not with arrogance, but with truth. Not to prove anything, but to simply be. You no longer need to defend yourself. No longer need to explain your pain. No longer need to beg for validation. Because now you recognize yourself. You inhabit yourself. And when you inhabit your own center, the world no longer carries the same weight. The words of others don't crush you. The silence of others doesn't disintegrate you. Rejection doesn't become a sentence. Because whoever has found themselves will never get lost in anyone else. This is the strength that comes from spiritual awareness. Not the kind of spirituality that promises quick fixes, but the kind that dives in. The kind that embraces your shadow with the same love that celebrates your light. The kind that understands that every path you've traveled, however painful, has brought you here. To this version of you that no longer needs to be accepted. Because you've accepted yourself. You begin to feel that your story has value. That your pain has purpose. That every part of you, even the one you've hidden most, is part of your wholeness. And that changes everything. Because now you no longer want to be an idealized version of yourself. You want to be real. You want to be whole. You want to be who you are, even if it means losing people. Because deep down, you've already understood. Those who leave when you're real were never whole. Spiritual awareness is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about the courage to continue even when you're afraid. It's about choosing yourself every day, even when the world insists you should be different. It's about trusting your process even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else. It's about stopping chasing and starting to walk towards yourself. It's a return, a rebirth, a place where you no longer need to justify yourself, where your pain is not a shame but a sign, where your sensitivity is not a weakness but a path, where your solitude becomes a temple, not a prison, where you finally begin to live with purpose, not to please but to express the truth that lives within you. And this movement is internal. It's silent, but it reverberates in everything. In the way you relate, in the way you say no, in the way you care for yourself, in the way you choose yourself. It's a new positioning, not a scream, but a presence, not a war, but a gentle firmness. And when you start living from this place, what once would have hurt you now no longer reaches you, because your soul is busy being who it came to be, and that, no one can take that away from you. If you felt this change happening inside you right now, comment here. I inhabit my soul with courage. Sometimes declaration is the first step for this new awareness to blossom. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is ready to stop running away, ready to go back, ready to meet. And I want to thank you for staying with me until the end of this dive, because not everyone can bear to look inside, but you stayed, you felt it, and maybe, even in silence, something has changed inside. And if you felt this content found you at the right time, subscribe to the channel, because this journey is just beginning. Here, each video is a reunion with parts of yourself that were forgotten. Each word is a key, and each step is a return home. And if all this made sense to you, leave your like now. Not for me, but for you. As a silent reminder, you chose to listen to yourself. If this video was a mirror, the next one could be a continuation of your healing. He's here on the screen now. Click and continue this journey.